Ethan Carter, 35, leaned back in his creaky desk chair, the faint hum of Seattle's Capitol Hill filtering through the open window of his condo. A graphic designer with a knack for turning chaos into clean lines, he spent his days crafting visuals for local startups, his sketches a quiet rebellion against the city's tech-driven pulse. His wife, Lauren, 32, was the opposite, a rising star at a sleek tech firm, her ambition as sharp as the glass towers downtown. Married 7 years, they'd built a life that felt solid, if not always thrilling. Their condo, cluttered with Ethan's art supplies and Lauren's ever-growing collection of self-help books, was a cozy bubble in a city that never slowed down. Lauren thrived on the hustle. She was always chasing the next deal, the next handshake, dragging Ethan to networking events where he'd nurse a craft beer and doodle on napkins while she worked the room. "It's just part of the game," she'd say, her hazel eyes glinting with purpose. Ethan didn't love the schmoozing, but he loved her, or at least the version of her that still laughed at his bad puns and curled up with him on rainy Sundays. Lately, though, those moments felt like fading Polaroids. Lauren was always swamped at work, her phone buzzing late into the night, her mind somewhere Ethan couldn't follow. The trouble started creeping in weeks before the party. Lauren had been hyping her boss Vanessa Kane's rooftop bash for ages, calling it a career-defining night. Vanessa, a tech titan with a reputation for spotting talent, was hosting at her penthouse overlooking Puget Sound. "This could make or break me, Ethan," Lauren said one evening, chopping vegetables for dinner with a precision that matched her drive. "Just show up, smile, be my +1. It's important." Ethan nodded, ignoring the knot in his gut. He wanted to be supportive, the husband who showed up no matter what. But something about her insistence felt off, like she was prepping for a performance he wasn't scripted for. The night before the party, Ethan caught the first real warning sign. He was tidying the kitchen counter, moving Lauren's stack of unopened mail, when he spotted her phone. Not her usual sleek iPhone, but an older model in a plain black case. Curious, he pressed the home button. The screen lit up with her lock screen, a photo of them at Pike Place Market 2 summers ago. His pulse quickened. Why did she need a second phone? Before he could process it, Lauren swept in, snatching it from the counter. "Work back up," she said, her voice too casual, eyes avoiding his. "IT gave it to me for client stuff. No big deal." She tucked it into her pocket and changed the subject, but the air felt heavier, like a storm brewing just out of sight. Ethan tried to shake it off. He told himself it was nothing, just his imagination running wild. Lauren had always been private about work, and he trusted her. Or at least he wanted to. But other signs kept piling up. She'd started staying late at the office, claiming crunch time on a big project. She'd come home smelling of a new citrusy perfume, nothing like the lavender spray she'd worn for years. When he asked about it, she shrugged. "Sample from coworker. You like it?" She didn't wait for his answer. Then there were the workouts, sudden evening gym sessions that left her returning after 10 p.m., already showered, her makeup untouched, her mood distant. Ethan suggested joining her once, thinking it could be fun. "I need to focus," she snapped, then softened. "It's just stress, okay? I'll be fine." Their condo, once a warm haven, started feeling like a stage for two actors playing parts. Lauren was always on her phone, texting with a faint smile she never explained. When Ethan entered the room, she'd flip the screen down or slip it under a cushion. Their conversations, once full of easy banter, dwindled to logistics, bills, groceries, the dog's vet appointment. At night, when Ethan reached for her, she'd turn away, pretending to be asleep. He tried talking about it once, asking if something was wrong. "You're overthinking it," she said, her tone sharp. "I'm just busy, Ethan. Can you not make this about you?" The deflection stung, but he let it go, not wanting to be the needy husband. Still, the doubts gnawed at him. He started noticing how Lauren asked about his schedule. Too casually, too often. "You're at the studio late tomorrow, right? Or meeting Jake for drinks this week?" At first, it seemed like she was just planning her day, but it began to feel like she was making sure he'd be out of the way. One night, he overheard her on the phone in the hallway, her voice low and soft, almost playful. When she saw him, She hung up mid-sentence and brushed past, muttering about a client call. Ethan stood there, the silence louder than any explanation. By the time the party loomed, Ethan's unease had settled into a quiet dread. He didn't want to go, didn't want to play the dutiful husband in a room full of strangers who'd size him up and find him lacking. But Lauren's words echoed. It's important for my career. So he ironed his best shirt, practiced his small talk smile, and told himself it was just one night. Maybe it would be fine. Maybe he was wrong about everything. As he locked the condo door and headed downtown, the Seattle skyline glittering against the dusk, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into something he'd never come back from. Ethan Carter pulled his jacket tighter against the Seattle chill as he stepped out of his car, the downtown high-rise looming like a beacon of ambition. Vanessa Kane's rooftop party was the kind of event Lauren lived for: glitz, power, and the promise of a career-defining handshake. Ethan, at 35, fell out of place in this world of tech titans and polished smiles, but he'd promised to show up for his wife. The knot in his gut, there since finding her second phone last night, tightened as he rode the glass elevator to the penthouse. He told himself it was just nerves. He was wrong. The rooftop was a vision of excess, string lights crisscrossing overhead, Puget Sound shimmering below, and a crowd of sleep professionals sipping craft cocktails. The air buzzed with laughter and the clink of glasses, the kind of scene you'd see in a glossy ad for Seattle's tech boom. Ethan scanned the crowd for Lauren, his eyes catching on her almost instantly. She stood near the glass railing, backlit by the city's glow, in a new emerald green dress that hugged her frame like a spotlight. Her laughter rang out, sharp and practiced, as she leaned toward a tall guy in a blazer and crisp white shirt, someone Ethan didn't know. Next to them was Vanessa Kane, her sharp eyes glinting with approval, her presence commanding the small circle. Ethan hesitated, watching Lauren from a distance. She looked different tonight, not just because of the dress or the curls cascading over her shoulders. It was the way she moved, confident, almost performative, like she was auditioning for a role he wasn't part of. Her hand brushed the guy's arm when she laughed, her body angled toward him in a way that felt too familiar. Vanessa said something, and Lauren's head tilted back, her smile wide but tense, her eyes darting to ensure Vanessa was pleased. Ethan's chest tightened. He'd seen Lauren work a room before, but this was something else, something that didn't include him. He made his way over, weaving through clusters of tech bros and power suits, the music a mellow pulse beneath the chatter. Lauren spotted him just as he reached her group, her smile flickering like a glitch. "Hey, you made it," she said, her voice bright but brittle, giving him a quick wave that felt more like a dismissal. She didn't introduce him to Vanessa or the guy, who she later called Ryan, a new consultant at her firm. Instead, she dove back into a conversation about some client pitch, her words clipped and exclusive, like Ethan was just another stranger. He tried to jump in, tossing out a comment about the project, but Lauren cut him off with a laugh, too loud, too forced, and pivoted to Ryan's take on the same topic. Ethan stood there, the outsider in his own wife's orbit, his presence barely registering. Ryan, with his easy grin and tailored blazer, seemed to pull Lauren's attention like a magnet. She leaned in when he spoke, her eyes locked on his, her laughter softer, more genuine than anything she'd aimed at Ethan in weeks. Vanessa watched it all, her lips curling in a way that made Ethan's skin crawl, like she was in on a secret he wasn't. He mumbled an excuse about needing a drink and drifted to the bar, his mind racing. Was he overthinking this? Or was the truth staring him in the face, dressed in emerald green and laughing too close to someone else? At the bar, Ethan nursed a ginger ale, the fizz doing little to settle his nerves. He kept stealing glances at Lauren's group. The pattern was unmistakable now. Her body turned toward Ryan, her hand grazing his sleeve, her smile one Ethan hadn't seen in months. Once, Ryan whispered something in her ear, and Lauren's laugh was low, intimate, the kind she used to save for quiet nights at home. Ethan's grip tightened on his glass. He wanted to march over, to pull her aside, to demand answers. But the crowd, the lights, the weight of Vanessa's gaze, it all felt like a trap, like he'd be the one who looked foolish if he made a scene. He tried to mingle, striking up a conversation with a couple of Lauren's coworkers. They were polite but distant, their talk circling back to office gossip and inside jokes Ethan couldn't follow. Every so often, he'd glance at Lauren, hoping for a look, a gesture, anything to bridge the growing chasm between them. But she kept her back to him, her energy locked in that tight circle with Ryan and Vanessa. It wasn't just that she was ignoring him. It was how alive she seemed, her eyes bright, her gestures animated in a way Ethan hadn't seen at home in ages. It made him wonder if he was the one draining her, if their condo, their life, their marriage was a cage she'd outgrown. The night grew colder, the Seattle wind cutting through Ethan's jacket. He stood by the railing, staring out at the dark expanse of Puget Sound, his breath visible in the air. He kept replaying the last few weeks, the second phone, the late nights, the way Lauren's warmth had turned to frost. Maybe this was just a bad night, he told himself. Maybe she was just caught up in the moment, playing the part her career demanded. But deep down, a quieter voice whispered the truth. Something was wrong, and it wasn't just the party. He looked back at Lauren, still laughing with Ryan, their heads bent close, and felt a jolt of dread. This wasn't just a crack in their marriage. It was the first fracture of something much bigger, and he wasn't sure he could stop it from breaking apart. Ethan Carter stood by the rooftop bar, the Seattle skyline blurring into a haze of lights as the party pulsed around him. The ginger ale in his hand had gone flat, much like the hope he'd clung to all evening. Lauren, his wife of 7 years, was still across the penthouse, her emerald green dress catching the glow of string lights as she laughed with Ryan, the slick consultant who seemed to own her attention. Vanessa Kane, Lauren's boss, hovered nearby, her sharp smile a silent endorsement of their chemistry. Ethan's chest ached with every glance he stole, each one confirming what he'd feared. He was invisible to her tonight, a stranger in her orbit. The rooftop, with its view of Puget Sound and the hum of ambition, felt like a stage where Ethan didn't belong. Lauren's dismissal earlier, her quick wave, her forced laugh when he tried to join her conversation, had stung, but it was her body language now that cut deeper. She leaned toward Ryan, her hand grazing his arm, her eyes bright with a warmth Ethan hadn't seen in months. When Ryan whispered something, her laugh was soft, intimate, the kind that used to be his. Vanessa watched it all, her gaze flicking between them like a director pleased with her cast. Ethan's grip on his glass tightened. Was he imagining it? Or was Lauren avoiding his eyes, her glances darting anywhere but his direction? He tried to shake it off, to tell himself it was just work, just networking. But the signs he'd ignored for weeks, the second phone, the late-night workouts, the new citrusy perfume, crashed into focus. He drifted back into the crowd, forcing himself to chat with a coworker of Lauren's, a guy named Tom who rambled about cloud computing. Ethan nodded absently, his eyes locked on Lauren. She was still with Ryan, their heads bent close, her hand now resting on his wrist for a beat too long. The sight hit like a punch, and Ethan excused himself, mumbling about needing air. He wandered to the edge of the rooftop, the cold Seattle wind biting through his jacket. Below, the city sparkled, indifferent to the fracture growing in his marriage. He replayed the night, searching for a moment when Lauren had looked at him, really looked at him. There wasn't one. Instead, he saw her in flashes, her stage smile, her body angled toward Ryan, her laughter sharper when Vanessa was watching. It wasn't just flirting, it was a performance, and Ethan was the audience she didn't want. He wondered if this was new, or if he'd been blind to it all along, too caught up in their cozy condo life to notice the distance widening between them. Desperate to do something, anything, Ethan decided to grab his coat and clear his head. Maybe he'd text Lauren, ask her to step away for a minute, talk like they used to. He slipped through the crowd, the music fading as he entered the penthouse's quieter interior. Vanessa's private office, where coats were stashed, was down a sleek hallway, its walls lined with abstract art that screamed money. The door was ajar, the room empty except for racks of jackets and a few purses on a chair. Ethan rummaged for his coat, the silence a brief reprieve from the rooftop's noise. Then he heard it, A low, muffled laugh, unmistakably Lauren's, coming from a side door that led to a private sitting room. His heart stopped. The laugh was followed by a deeper voice, Ryan's, soft and teasing. Ethan froze, his coat half off the rack, his pulse roaring in his ears. He wanted to believe it was innocent, just colleagues joking after too many drinks. But then came another sound, a clink of glasses, a stifled gasp, and a rustle that left no room for doubt. "Phew, someone might hear," Lauren whispered, her voice breathless, laced with a thrill Ethan hadn't heard in years. Ryan's reply was too low to catch, but their laughter, hushed and conspiratorial, was a blade to Ethan's chest. He stood there rooted, his hands trembling. The line between suspicion and certainty shattered. Every instinct screamed to fling open the door, to confront them, to demand answers. But fear, or maybe cowardice, held him back. What would he say? What could he do? The image of Lauren's face, caught in the act, was more than he could bear. Instead, he listened, each sound a confirmation of the truth he'd dodged for weeks. The second phone, the late nights, the coldness at home, it all clicked into place, a puzzle he'd refused to solve until now. Finally, the sounds softened, replaced by murmurs and a faint creak, as if they were moving away. Ethan didn't wait to find out. He grabbed his coat and slipped out of the office, his steps silent on the polished floor. The hallway stretched endlessly, the distant thump of rooftop music mocking his collapse. He kept his head down, avoiding the eyes of a passing waiter, and made it to the elevator. As the glass walls revealed the city below, Ethan's reflection stared back, pale, hollow, a man unmoored. His phone buzzed in his pocket, and for a wild second, he hoped it was Lauren, offering an explanation, a lifeline. It was just a work email, irrelevant and cruel in its timing. Outside, the Seattle night was sharp, the air stinging his face as he stumbled to his car. He sat behind the wheel, unable to start the engine, the betrayal settling into his bones. The rooftop lights still glowed above, a world where Lauren was rewriting their story without him. He didn't call her, didn't text. What was there to say? He'd heard enough to know his marriage was crumbling, but not enough to face her without breaking himself. As he finally drove home, the city's hum a dull roar, Ethan felt the weight of a truth he couldn't unhear. Lauren wasn't just drifting away. She was already gone. Ethan Carter sat at the kitchen table in his Seattle condo, the dawn light casting long shadows across the counter. The events of Vanessa Kane's rooftop party replayed in his mind like a looped reel. Lauren's emerald green dress, her laughter with Ryan behind a closed door, the unmistakable sounds that shattered his world. The second phone, the late nights, her cold deflections, all the signs he'd ignored now glared like neon. He hadn't slept, his eyes burning, his heart a mix of rage and grief. Lauren had come home after 2 a.m., her heels clicking softly as she slipped into the guest room without a word. Ethan stayed in the dark, wrestling with what came next. When Lauren emerged that morning, her casual, "Oh, you're up," was a weak mask for the tension in her eyes. She poured coffee, avoiding his gaze, her movements rehearsed. Ethan's voice was low, steady, despite the storm inside. "How was the party?" She shrugged, wiping non-existent crumbs from the counter. "Fine. Long night." He pressed, unable to stop. "You seemed cozy with Ryan." Her hand froze, then she forced a smile. "He's new. Vanessa wanted me to make him feel welcome. Why are you interrogating me?" The deflection was sharp, but Ethan saw the flicker of guilt in her eyes. "I heard you, Lauren. In the office. With him." For a split second, she paled, her breath catching. Then her face hardened. "You're paranoid, Ethan. You've been distant for months. Maybe you're the problem." Her words were a blade, twisting the blame back on him. She doubled down, voice rising. "If you make this public, I'll say you were controlling. I'll tell everyone you held me back. Don't push me." The threat hung heavy, a glimpse of the Lauren who'd do anything to protect her image. Ethan stared, numb, as she stormed out, leaving her coffee untouched. He felt the ground shift beneath him, but something else stirred too, a resolve he hadn't known he had. He wasn't the villain in her story. and he wouldn't let her rewrite him into one. Ethan's first move was to protect himself. He called Sarah, a lawyer friend who'd handled tough cases. Over coffee in a quiet Capitol Hill cafe, Sarah listened as he recounted the party, the second phone, Lauren's threats. Her advice was blunt: document everything. Texts, absences, anything suspicious. Keep your responses calm, businesslike. She's building a narrative, don't give her ammunition. Ethan nodded, the weight of her words grounding him. Back home, he started a log. Dates of Lauren's late nights, screenshots of her vague texts, a photo of the second phone he'd snapped before she hit it again. It felt paranoid, but Sarah's warning echoed. People show their true colors when cornered. The days that followed were a test of endurance. Lauren floated through the condo like nothing had happened, chatting about work, acting surprised if Ethan was curt. She posted on Instagram, brunch with friends, a sunset over Puget Sound, projecting a life untouched by betrayal. At night, she'd text in the living room, smiling at her screen, flipping it down when Ethan passed. He bit back his anger, following Sarah's advice to stay measured. But the loneliness was crushing. Their home, once warm with shared laughter, felt like a stage for a play he hadn't rehearsed. He wondered if he'd missed the moment their marriage began to crack, or if Lauren had always been this good at hiding. Then came a lifeline. Mia, a former intern at Lauren's firm, slid into Ethan's DMs. Can we meet? It's about the party. Ethan's pulse quickened. He barely knew Mia. She'd been a quiet presence at company events, always watching more than talking. They met at a diner near Pike Place Market, the smell of fried eggs cutting through the tension. Mia's voice was low, nervous. I overheard Lauren and Ryan after the party. They were in Vanessa's office, talking about keeping things quiet. She slid her phone across the table, a grainy audio file queued up. Ethan's hand shook as he pressed play. Lauren's voice, cool and calculated. Just stick to the story. No one can prove anything. Ryan's laugh, smug, followed by her warning. Vanessa can't know. Not yet. The recording was brief, but damning. Proof Ethan hadn't dared hope for. He shared it with Sarah, who called it a game changer. This shows intent to deceive. Keep it safe, and don't confront her yet. Ethan also told Jake, his oldest friend, who'd sensed trouble in Ethan's silence. Jake's outrage was a bomb. She doesn't get to do this to you, man. You're not alone. For the first time, Ethan felt a spark of strength. He wasn't just a victim of Lauren's lies. He could fight back, not with anger, but with truth. He kept documenting. A late-night call Lauren took in the hallway, her voice soft and secretive. A LinkedIn post where she tagged Ryan with a flirty emoji. Each piece was a brick in the wall he was building, not to destroy her, but to protect himself. Lauren sensed the shift. One night, she cornered him in the kitchen, her tone softer, almost pleading. Ethan, I messed up. Can we talk? I don't want to lose us. Her eyes were wide, vulnerable, and for a moment, he wanted to believe her. But the memory of her threats, the recording, the months of distance, it was too much. I know who you are now, he said quietly. Her face hardened, and she walked away. The next day, she posted a cryptic story about outgrowing toxicity, a jab Ethan felt in his bones. She was already spinning the narrative, painting herself as the hero. But Ethan had the truth, and he wasn't letting go. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, he felt ready. Ethan Carter stood in his Seattle condo, the morning lights spilling across his sketch pad, where bold lines traced a new design. A mural of Puget Sound's restless waves. Weeks had passed since Vanessa Kane's rooftop party, where Lauren's betrayal with Ryan, her colleague, had shattered Ethan's world. The second phone, her late-night whispers, the muffled laughter behind a closed door, it all led to this moment. Armed with Mia's damning audio and a resolve forged in pain, Ethan was no longer the sidelined husband. He was rebuilding step by careful step, and today felt like the first real sunrise in months. The fallout began when Ethan, guided by his lawyer Sarah, sent Mia's recording to Lauren's firm's HR. The audio, Lauren coaching Ryan to stick to the story and hide their affair, was ironclad. Ethan didn't gloat or confront her. He let the truth do the work. Within days, Whispers spread through Lauren's tech circle. Her fling with Ryan, once a smug secret, became a liability. Vanessa, ever the pragmatist, distanced herself, her sharp smile nowhere to be seen when HR called Lauren in. The company, wary of scandal, sidelined her from key projects. Ryan, too, faced scrutiny, his hotshot status crumbling under the weight of their deceit. Lauren moved out the next week, her bags packed in silence, her emerald green dress left crumpled in the closet. Ethan kept the condo, turning the guest room into a studio where he poured his grief into art. His sketches, once tentative, grew vivid, jagged cityscapes, stormy seas, each stroke a release. Friends who drifted away, swayed by Lauren's early spin, returned with apologies. Jake, Ethan's closest ally, rallied others to share Mia's recording discreetly, dismantling Lauren's narrative of being the wronged heroine. Social media, where Lauren had posted cryptic jabs about toxic relationships, turned against her. A co-worker's comment, "Truth always comes out," beneath her latest selfie stung more than she'd admit. Ethan stayed above the fray, his focus on healing, not revenge. Lauren didn't go quietly. One evening, she texted Ethan, her tone a mix of desperation and venom. "You're ruining my life. I'll tell everyone you pushed me into this." Ethan, braced by Sarah's advice, didn't engage. He forwarded the message to Sarah, who added it to the file. When Lauren tried a final gambit, a LinkedIn post hinting at a controlling marriage, Sarah was ready. A cease and desist letter, backed by the recording and Ethan's meticulous logs, silenced her. The post vanished, and Lauren's network, once her stage, grew quiet. Her threats, once terrifying, were hollow against the truth. Ethan's life began to shift. He started teaching design workshops at a community center near Pike Place Market, finding purpose in guiding others to create. His classes filled up, his quiet humor and raw honesty drawing students who saw his art online. One piece, a mural of Seattle's skyline fractured by lightning, went viral on Instagram, shared by a local gallery. It wasn't fame Ethan sought, but freedom, a chance to redefine himself beyond the pain. He met Mia for coffee to thank her, learning she'd left Vanessa's firm for a better job, her courage in sharing the recording a spark for her own fresh start. The condo, once a battleground of silence and secrets, felt like home again. Ethan rearranged the furniture, hung new sketches, and played music without checking for Lauren's approval. He adopted a scruffy rescue dog, a mutt named Finn, whose eager bounds through Capitol Hill trails forced Ethan outside, into the world. Friends invited him to dinners, art shows, even a rainy hike, their warmth a reminder he wasn't alone. The loneliness that had crushed him in the aftermath began to lift, replaced by a cautious hope. Lauren's life, by contrast, dimmed. Her career stalled, her reputation bruised by the affair's fallout. She moved to a smaller apartment across town, her social media posts less frequent, her bravado faded. Ethan heard through Jake that she and Ryan had split, their fling unable to survive the scrutiny. He felt no joy in her struggles, only a quiet relief that justice had found its way. Sarah assured him the legal file, texts, screenshots, the recording, protected him if Lauren tried to rewrite history again. But Ethan sensed she wouldn't. The fight had gone out of her, her carefully crafted image no longer a shield. One evening, Ethan sat on his balcony, Finn curled at his feet,